Hello, and welcome to the December version of My Life in Art. I'm John Meyer, your host, president of PAC. We'd like to let you know that in January, our guest will be Elizabeth Ruffner. That will be January 19th, right here in Stage 2, which is right next to Peregrine Books in the alley. So we hope that you'll join us to hear Elizabeth Ruffner, and we hope you'll stay tuned to listen to our guest this afternoon, Jonathan Best. Welcome, everybody, to the December issue of My Life in Art, and I'm very pleased to introduce my guest, musician, composer, actor, Jonathan Best. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
You guys can applaud for Jonathan. That's good. Okay. Yeah. There we go. See, we actually have people here. All right. So I will start with my usual first question that I ask everybody, and I think you've watched this a couple of times before, so you probably know what's coming. So where were you born, and if different, where did you grow up?
I grew up and was born in New York State, just one county up from New Jersey.
Oh. Okay, well then we have that in common because I'm a Long Island boy.
Long Island,
so everything to me was
long.
Upstate, but
yeah.
So very good. And you were there how long?
I moved around a lot, so it's hard
okay.
to really keep it. But I probably left home around 19.
Okay, did you go to college or?
No, I went to California.
Oh, almost as good.
Yeah, it's better actually. I recommend it.
All right, and how long have you been in Prescott, and why did you move here?
I moved here in 2002 with my wife, and at the time, and she had a job at Prescott College.
Oh, very good.
Mary Poole, everybody knows her, right?
Okay, so and you have been here since, obviously.
Yeah, ever since. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Now, according to your bio that you furnished me, you didn't start music lessons, or it seemed like you didn't start music lessons until you were about 14. Is that correct?
Probably more like 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you started
Playing. I started playing when I was 14.
Okay. On the piano, I assume?
Maybe 12, actually.
Okay. That's somewhat late for a lot of kids. Most of them start when they're 6, 7. Was that a hindrance at all, starting that late?
No, it was actually it worked for me.
Okay.
Because it was my idea.
Oh.
Because usually when kids start at like 6 and stuff, I think it's more, it's not their idea.
Right.
They're kind of told.
Yes. Well, I'm the youngest of 3, and my mother has told me before she passed away that by the time it got to me, she didn't tell me I had to take music lessons. She asked. And of course, at that point,
that's nice to ask.
I said no, like an idiot. So,
but it's never too late.
Well, that's true. I mean, I do play some guitar, but I still don't read music.
Reading is overrated.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that. All right. So, with that in mind, was there an earlier significant first exposure to art?
Before 12?
Yes.
Well, I mean, just life is quite an exposure.
True.
And I was really actually more into drawing. I was really
really?
I would draw endlessly.
Okay.
I drew 50 years worth of what are they called?
Jack-o'-lanterns?
Jack-o'-lanterns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I used them up a couple of years ago, I think. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But yeah.
Are you still drawing now from time to time?
Oh, I still love to draw, but I don't kind of have that kind of, there was like a certain passion that I had when I was a kid. I was just like constantly drawing, and it was like an exploration. It was a way, it was an amazing experience.
Oh, I can imagine. Using a pencil? Or?
I was really into the rapidograph.
Which is what? I don't know what that is.
It's a drafter's tool.
Okay.
So it's ink, and the ink flows very steadily from it, and so it's a very fine line. So I would just have fun like doodling with that thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there something that was propelling what you were drawing, or is it really just free-flowing?
I think it was childhood angst.
Okay.
I was really like just letting, it was flowing out of me like it was flowing out of the pen.
Gotcha. Okay. And what is your educational background?
High school.
Okay.
And just, life.
Life, right.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm a student of life.
Very good. Now, talk a bit about your time in New York City as a musician, and you also owned a studio. And I assume you sound like you were producing music there.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about, and maybe some people we might recognize that you might have recorded?
Well, I moved to New York City. I think it's about 25. I was 25, and that was when I decided I'm going to actually work at being the rock star that I was expecting to be all my life.
Right.
So I thought, now it turns out that it's taking. I'm going to have to put some effort into it. So I moved into New York, and I decided I'm going to just do whatever it takes. And so I was playing on the street. That's what I did.
Wow.
And
What were
it
you
worked
playing on
really
the
well.
street?
I had a Casio. At first,
okay.
first I met this guy who played guitar, and then we rented a piano and put it in a warehouse on a dolly, and then we would roll it around the city. We'd
Wow.
actually roll it all the way across town to the east side,
Wow.
where all the money was.
And it stayed in tune?
I had to tune it before each show.
I bet.
And so I discovered that actually the east side, where all the money was not where all the money came to us. So we came back to the west side.
Okay.
And then I realized if I would probably make more money by myself.
Okay.
So I strapped a Casio around my neck with bungee cords. And
Okay.
that worked.
And what kind of music were you playing?
Just my own stuff,
Okay.
just, funky.
Was it instrumental or were there lyrics?
I would sing. So I had a mic stand. I had a
Okay.
whole setup on a cart that I would wheel around.
And was there someone, were there musicians who were influencing you at that time of the kind of music you were playing or trying to play?
It's interesting. I sort of feel like after I was doing this stuff, it was really funky, right? And then I started listening to Prince. And I was thinking, did he listen to what I was doing?
Oh, you felt he was doing your
I
music?
think I influenced him.
Well, interesting.
Yeah.
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 Okay. And tell us about the studio that you owned. How did that come
So
about?
then,
What did you do?
because I wanted to record my own music, so I started just buying equipment. And then, as I was playing on the street, I would sell my cassettes, and I had like 5 cassette machines running all
Okay.
the time. And then I would, just to make these cassettes,
Right.
and then I'd sell them. And people would ask me how I recorded them, and I would tell them in my studio. So they would come, and then the studio just started building. And I just started getting more and more interesting projects, and they would just kind of feed into each other, the recording and the performing.
Okay. So were these people who were coming to record with you professional musicians? Were they hobbyists? Were they just wanting to get something down on tape?
There were independent record companies, and there was self-promoting musicians, and also a lot of singers, that were just trying to do their own thing, and so they would come, and I would kind of help them,
Okay.
achieve their vision and stuff. And I also did soundtracks
For?
for movies.
Oh, nice. Independent movies?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
movies that
all-
we've
all-
seen, or?
It's funny. I don't think you've seen any of them. I'm sort of guessing that you haven't.
Right.
Yeah.
So nothing completely mainstream then?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah. There
okay.
wasn't a lot of me.
And I don't know if you went right from there into the next thing. You said that you toured with David Byrne from the Talking Heads. What was that like? Any fun stories? And why? How did you connect with him? And what did you do with him?
When I was playing in New York, it was just a constant interacting and connecting with people and trying to get things going. So I would play with people that were playing with some of these big stars and stuff, and then so they would help me connect. So
Okay.
a friend that I was recording with gave one of my tapes to David Byrne, and my idea was that he would sign me to his label, which is what I really wanted.
Right.
And when he called me and asked me to go on tour with him, I was a little disappointed. It took me like 5 seconds to realize that this actually was a good opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
So was he still with the Talking Heads at that point, or was
No,
it just
they
him
had-
alone?
Yeah, he was
Okay.
doing his own thing.
Okay. Did you have any chance during that touring to get any of your music played on any of those concerts, or was it pretty much just him?
Well, it was my music that I was
Yeah.
playing, in him,
Right.
in his music.
Okay.
You know,
And
he let me do my own thing. you
okay.
know.
In terms of, like a riff inside
Well,
one
the
of
thing
his
is,
songs?
there were
or-
charts. Like there were like the music was all charted out, and
Okay.
there were lots of notes written. But the thing is, because I wasn't the greatest reader, I would sometimes get away with playing what wasn't written.
Okay.
And,
So was
and
it?
and he'd say, like, "Is that really how it's supposed to be?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I think so." But-
So was more improvisational at times then?
well, there was a lot of room for improvisation. Like
Okay.
there would be places where I would take a solo and stuff.
So when you're improving music, and this may be a very naive question, but when you're improving music, does it always fall under the category of jazz? I mean, is jazz the definition of it being improvisational?
I think actually jazz is a hindrance often to improvisation.
How so?
Because it actually is, it's much more structured than people are aware of.
Okay,
And the rules are kind of severe.
gotcha.
And if you could screw it up, and you get looks from people. If you didn't play that A sharp 5 with a diminished 7th minor thing
Right, right.
So to me, improvisation, when I think of improvisation, it's much more free. Like you can just take what you're feeling,
Right.
and if you know, if you kind of, it's sort of like confidence. Learning some of these like rules are more about just building confidence, so that you
Okay.
feel like you know what you're doing. But I do a lot of improvisation where I literally can close my eyes and just like play and just feel it. It's amazing what you can do when you just let it go.
Sure. We have an improv troupe at Prescott Center for the Arts,
Yeah.
the Improvatonians, who I work with on a regular basis. And, I love improv, the freedom. You don't have to worry about a script. You're just flowing along. But it's I guess, I don't know if this is the right term, more intellectual, because you're using language to communicate. Obviously, music is a language that you're using to communicate. I would not be able to speak that music, that language, if I were trying to improv music. Is it any different than
Well,
with spoken language?
I think it's interesting because I've seen like this improv groups, and I wonder, like how many riffs they have in their brains.
Right.
Because I have a feeling that they kind of like there's things that they are ready to take out, to say and to do
Right.
under different and they use them in different ways.
Right.
And it's very similar to music where
Okay.
you have these sort of like motifs and you just let them come out at certain places. And
Is it, to me, I would feel like it would be, obviously you're listening in spoken word improv as well, but with musical improv, you really have to listen to what the others are doing, right?
Well,
so that
I
it
think-
meshes?
But don't you with theater improv?
Well,
too?
yes,
You
of
have
course,
to-
but that's what I'm getting to is you're using language so that there is an intellectual understanding. That's what I was getting. Do you have that kind of language in music as well?
There are like different languages, so I think that there's sometimes you need an interpreter. And that, because people have different experiences in the way they think of music. But so maybe it would be similar to improv without words,
Okay.
which should also be an interesting.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, sure, you could absolutely do an improv without words, without a doubt.
And so like a lot of jazz musicians like can't improv with rock and roll musicians because they think there's this belief that that they're a different language, but
I
actually
see.
music is a universal
Sure,
language.
yes.
So I think people forget that.
Right. They do.
Yeah.
I think they do. Now, you also spent a good deal of time in Africa with the Maasai tribe learning about community music and its healing powers. Tell us about those experiences. How did that change you?
I'd be in villages where the entire village, actually, I start to cry thinking about this because it's incredibly powerful.
Oh, I can imagine.
Because these are groups of people that are struggling with challenges that we cannot comprehend.
I can imagine,
Where
sure.
death is around every corner, where there's
Right.
the oppression. The Maasai are on pretty much the lowest on the economic
Okay.
ladder in Kenya, which is a poor country.
Right.
So life is hard, you know. So you have these villages of people, and they all sing together. And when they're singing, they're happy. You know, the joy is so real and deep. And so, you know, I'm there, and with people that go days without eating and own the teacup. That's what they own, is their teacup. And then I come back here, and there's all this, you know, sadness, and there's this kind of life, there's this kind of apathy and stuff. And that's part of this inspiration with starting this organization, because I know how powerful music is when people do it together.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And you know, when you're raised in a culture where you don't question your musicality, then it's amazing what can happen.
Yeah, I remember as a boy on Long Island for July 4th, there was a beach that all neighbors shared. And on July 4th, we would get together, and by the end of the night, we'd have a big roaring campfire, and everyone would be sitting on logs around it, and they would start singing folk songs. And that would connect you to everybody else. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Across the Universe. It's about Beatles music and taking place in the 60s. And there's one segment of the movie where there's, about 8 or 9 people, and they're all lying down with their heads in the middle in a circle.
Yeah.
And they just start singing a Beatles song. And every time I watch the movie and I see that scene, it occurs to me that in general, in this country, we don't sing together.
No.
And I think that's a crime. I think, you know, when we were at a time in our country where we did sing together, it made us more whole. Would you agree with that?
Totally. Yeah.
So
that's my passion right now. And practically every time I would say 99% of the time I meet a new person, I ask them, you know, do they play music? And 99% of the time, it's like I used to, or I can't carry a tune in a bucket. You know, like there's so many caveats, you know, about their musicality.
Right.
You know.
Yes. Well, I think you said it a little earlier, where the music is not something that just flows out of a lot of people here in this country. It's, you know, we turn the radio on, or we put a CD in.
To me, that's part of the crime.
Yeah. The music is given to us as opposed to it coming out of us.
Right. The music industry, actually, I believe, has built itself on this untruth that we need other people to make music for us. It cannot exist if we really know how musical we are and how much music we can make together.
Right.
And so I actually see the music business is kind of falling apart. And to me, it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
It's just what we need.
Let me ask this while it's in my head, because it's not written down. It goes to a little bit of what you were saying. What is your take on today's music? You know, what you hear on the radio, the things that people are winning Grammys for. Is any of it music you listen to? Is any music you think that is worthwhile listening to?
Actually, you know, like this brings up an interesting point, and it's a conversation that's been going on forever.
I'm sure.
About what is music. You know, like a lot of people will say, you know, like, is the sound of someone dropping a bucket of marbles on the floor, is that music?
Interesting.
To me, that's more musical than most of what I hear. Because I feel like, to me, music is sound that connects us and that moves people and that is human made. And that, you know, I'm including all the animals and the plants in there. You know, there's music of the spheres. There's music that's happening all around us all the time. It's our interactions with each other. And then there's these sounds that are used to manipulate us. And it's, you could think of the jingles and the ads and stuff, which is specifically designed to manipulate. But then there's also the music industry where the music is created for a very specific purpose.
Sure.
And no matter how artistic what some of these performers are, it's taken and it's processed and it's edited. And the whole thing is designed to make money.
Oh, sure,
And
of course.
And money is a very undimensional value.
Yes. Yeah,
So-
well, it's artificial. Money doesn't exist in nature. We've created it.
Right. And then we're slaves to it. Then
Yes.
we feel like, and then all the people in the music industry, they depend, their jobs are depending on them changing the music so that it will continue this process. So I have strong feelings about that.
Right. The piece that popped into my head when you were talking about music being all around is it Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin? That one, or what's the other one? It's not. I'm getting the title. Where he went over to France and then he came back with American in Paris. Yeah. Right, where you have honking horns and other sorts of things, where he's actually trying to build a picture with music. Do you think he was successful in doing that? And is that music you enjoy listening to?
I don't know that particular piece
Okay.
that you're talking about.
Wow, interesting. Okay, because
I mean,
it's
partly
pretty standard.
because
But
I'm very spaced out and I wasn't really paying as close attention as I could
okay,
have. But
that's all right.
so maybe you could ask me, reframe the question.
Well, if you're not familiar with the piece, I'm not sure that I can reframe the question very
Okay.
well. But it is, he went over to Paris, stayed there for a while, and was influenced by the sights and the sounds of the city, and came back and composed this piece, which has several different movements. It is the ballet music for the film American in Paris. And like I say, there are many different aspects of it where he is trying to, again, create a visual picture through music with honking horns and different rhythms, using different instruments to help simulate different aspects of the city that he was seeing. So you probably have to really hear the piece in order
to me, it totally works.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm talking about. It's the connection.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So these lessons that you learned over in Maasai, or these experiences you had with the Maasai people, led to this Music for People's Musician Leadership Program. What was that about, and what did you do
Well,
with
what's
it?
interesting is it happened at the same time. It was timed perfectly.
Okay.
So that I went to Kenya. The first time I went there, I came back and went straight into this Music for People program.
Okay.
And so it felt like there was nothing, I was in a plane and then I was back where I was, except it was just a bunch of people making music from their hearts again, And so it was music that was just flowing out of people. And so it was a group that's designed for that purpose, where people are learning how to just let that music flow. And so a lot of these people were kind of they were ready for it,
Okay.
And so I immediately signed up for this 4-year program. I said, this is what I have to do. And what the 4-year program is to learn how to facilitate groups.
Okay.
And so to kind of bring more people into this fold, So, and then they continued completely. For 4 years, I was going to Kenya and then coming back and doing this Music for People program.
Okay.
So it was just this constant interplay. In fact, I was working on a documentary in Kenya at this one time, and it was like going really well, and like the Maasai leader, I said I have to go, because I have to get to this Music for People thing, and he was like, no, you can't go, because we're on the verge of something here, But I said, when I explained what the Music for People was about, he lit up and he said, this is, you got to go. Because it was connected. Like he knew that we're the connection.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very nice. So what sort of things would you, would you do with this program when you came back here? Was it certain age groups or denominations?
Well,
or
it covered
whatever?
it covered everything.
Okay.
People trying to just create that safety, the space where people feel like it's their place to be creative
Okay.
musically and to get some of these things out of the way, you know, like their ideas of structure, what needs to be, you know, in place.
Gotcha. To free themselves up from the constraints of that's bad, that's good.
Right.
Those
it's
sorts of things.
incredible how much of that stuff permeates everything.
Yes. Oh,
you know?
We're filled with that every day.
Yeah. I have students where like we were working on something and suddenly we realize together that there's some real trauma, that they're actually working through some early childhood trauma through the music because
Right.
they're
Neat.
seeing how, wow, this can flow. But I was taught that it couldn't,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I don't have a very good musical ear, and I've been told all my life, you can't sing. So I
Yeah.
started believing it.
Right, and then you
know?
keep telling yourself, just like you did just now.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
yeah.
But I have found that in my later life, I tried to let go of that more and just, you know, I know now I can at least carry a tune. I'm certainly not an opera singer or anything like that, but I would feel confident, you know,
You
playing
could
my
sing
guitar.
in the opera.
I don't know if I
You
want
know,
to.
it would-
but
it would
I don't have
be-
the opera gene, but
You know, it would have to be up to the audience to be transformed. They'd have to
Right.
readjust their perceptions of what opera is.
right. Well, there'd be a lot of transformation there.
Yeah,
But,
and that's what music is for. It
Yes.
transforms people,
Right.
and you have to take chances.
Yes.
And you have to like. Every time I do a performance, I know I'm taking a chance. It scares the crap out of me. Like, what's going to happen this time?
Right, right.
You know, and I know that everyone's going to change, and they don't always know it.
Okay. Interesting. And now, then from there, I believe you transitioned into or grew into this thing called the Com Music Key. What is that?
Said that very well.
Thank you very well. Thank you very much. Can you tell us how that came about and what it is and what you do with it?
So, you know, after I graduated from this Music for People program, and I was doing this, and I was like, every performance I did, I was always trying to get more kind of audience involved and just connect people. And I was teaching, and I was, and I realized that I'm running a nonprofit because I'm not making any money.
Sure.
So I'm thinking, why not get some more community support? And so I had this kind of open invitation to people to come and see who wants to be involved with this organization, you know. And it didn't have a name, but I knew it was time. Someone had said, I'm going to give you $1,000 if you start this organization. And I thought, you know, I thought that should be enough to start this. I didn't realize it wasn't. But
No, not even close.
But it seemed like a lot of money at that. You know,
Sure.
that's where I was at the
Yes,
time.
right.
And and I figured, you know, it's a vote of confidence, and
Sure.
so it surely made me feel like, okay, it's time to do this thing, you know. And so, you know, we got a board together. We started, you know, try to plan things, and you know, it turns out that it's still not easy. It's not easy with music to get through a lot of that fear, and I'm working hard on this.
Your fear or other people's fears? Okay.
Both, you know. But I'm seeing a lot of fear around music. You know,
Sure.
actually, you know, David Byrne, speaking of which, you know that album, Fear of Music?
Vaguely.
Yeah, that was Talking Heads.
Right.
And I always thought it was kind of like a joke, you know, but it's really true.
Yeah.
You know, there's some very deep fear.
Right. So when you get a group of people together, what transpires? What happens when you're working?
Sometimes there's a lot of shaking.
Yeah.
Like I actually had someone come to one of my play shops. She was literally trembling
Wow.
out of fear. And, you know, but by the end of it, she was just joking and laughing, and everybody was happy. So it's sort of, what was the question?
So the question is, what actually transpires when you get a group of people together with the Com
Totally
Music Key?
depends on the group.
Okay. Do they bring
Completely.
instruments? Do you provide instruments?
We provide instruments. We have instruments, and people can bring their instruments.
Okay.
But they do anyway, even if because they bring their voice, so they can't
Oh.
help but bring their.
Okay.
They bring their tummy.
Yes,
And
that's
they
excellent. I
bring
wasn't thinking about that.
Usually
Right.
they do.
Okay.
And so it's always magic. The thing I can tell you is that it's always magic. It's always unexpected.
Right.
And yeah.
So you don't say, okay, we're all going to riff on Mary Had a Little Lamb. You just
could do that. We could
oh,
try
you could.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
You want to try that?
Not at the moment,
Okay.
but we maybe get the group together and,
Yeah.
and do something like that. That might be kind of fun. And other times, is it just something that someone begins with a sound and then people build onto that and it just grows on its own?
You know what I usually do is I you know, we're sitting in a circle, and again, like it's always so different.
Sure.
But usually there's a circle, right? Because I want everybody to see each other, and I want people to be aware of their connection.
Sure.
So we might just kind of sit there with the silence for a little while, you know, and just kind of listen, and usually like I'm listening to what kind of groove is starting to develop. And somebody might be just like kind of, you know, going like this. And then, you know, then you could add something to that.
Right,
You know?
right.
And then, because I know that there's music always there. So it's not about like how do we create this music, it's how do we let this music happen. And we use whatever tools we have. Like
So it's a very organic
I do know a lot
process.
of music theory, right? So I personally use those tools. But I think that the most important tools are tools that we have in our lives just by living. So we have the listening,
Sure.
we have caring, you know, we have the desire to communicate, and there's like leadership skills, there's people that care enough about something to take the lead.
Right,
You know?
yes.
So, and there's like giving space, there's sharing, you know, the ability to share. So these are the most important musical skills, and they get undervalued compared to all the ones that you're taught in conservatory.
Right. Right. To make beautiful
Right.
noise or what it might be.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this is actually somewhat therapeutic for some people.
Yes. I mean, it's totally therapeutic. I mean, music.
I would assume that includes you as well. You get something out of that as
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you usually like if I'm in a really bad mood, and like I have like oftentimes I'll be in a really bad mood. I don't know if you know that, but it's,
No.
so I'm in a
Good
really
to know.
bad mood, and then I know I'm going to do this play shop. I'm going to do
Yes.
some kind of musical thing.
Okay.
Maybe it's a performance or something, and I feel like this is going to be really. It's not going to be good, you know.
Because
I'm
of the way
just-
you're feeling.
I'm feeling bad, you
Right.
know? But then it happens, and I feel good,
Awesome.
and I feel good the whole time.
So
You know, so, and
It-
then I've also discovered if I'm depressed and I sing, I can't do both simultaneously. It's like,
yeah. Right.
it's impossible. You know, you start singing, you're not depressed. You can't be. So oftentimes I'm so depressed that I'm not going to sing because
Right.
I want to be depressed. It's easier to be depressed.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right.
It's much easier to wallow. Absolutely.
Wallow, yeah.
Yes. So, and again, I can see that you don't really fix yourself in labels of music and that sort of thing, but would that not give rise to the blues if
The
you were
blues is a
depressed?
perfect example. The blues is a beautiful, it's an open, it's a simple form, and you know, it gives you space. It's designed for that purpose, for expression of just feeling. You
Sure,
know?
but there are rules there too. I mean, or at least imposed
They're
rules
so-
that
so
we
simple.
can free ourselves
There,
of.
you know, we could learn these rules right now. I mean, it's just you just got to go. That's. Is that hard? Is that hard?
No,
Really?
no, not at
Okay.
all. Okay, that's nice that it's easy.
Yeah.
So, very cool. Now, how did you get involved playing and perhaps even composing the scores for silent films that with Prescott Film Festival. How'd that come about?
I don't really know how that happened. They called me and asked me to do it,
Okay.
and I think it worked well. You know, I actually used some of my film scoring experience with that. You know, so it's
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and are you the only one playing when they're showing those films?
Yeah. Yeah.
And is that improv, or do you have an idea of what's...
Completely. Like I'll watch. You know, sometimes I don't even watch the whole movie beforehand. I'll always like watch the beginning and the end.
Okay.
You know, because that's important.
Mm-hmm.
And so I usually have an idea of what I'm going to. I get some motifs together.
Okay.
But by the end of the movie, I've forgotten what I planned, and because it becomes a new thing. I'm following the journey of the movie. You know.
Okay. So nothing is pre-written when you do those?
No, I don't write stuff.
So, and unfortunately I have not attended any of those, but if they had more than one screening, would someone be apt to then hear something very different one time between the next, even though it's the same film being shown?
Right. Yeah,
So,
that would be interesting to, like, if you could, market this thing with all of these different soundtracks,
right.
depending on your mood,
Sure. I believe it was last season I had a visual artist here interviewing, and we somehow the question came up, does music influence their painting or their drawing? Has that ever, I mean, I know you don't probably really draw a whole lot anymore, but when you were a child and you were drawing back then, did you listen to music while you were drawing? Did that have any influence on you?
I don't remember listening to music while I was drawing, but I think that it seems like it went. I think that when I didn't think that I was going to be able to be. They don't have drawing rock stars.
No.
And that's what I really wanted.
Okay.
So I think that's why. I think I was drawing, and I was really into that, but I did a performance one time, community performance, and I got so much attention. That positive attention, because these are all the community I grew up in, that I was like, wow, I couldn't let go of that.
Right.
And so I think I sort of transitioned. I took like the passion that I had with the drawing, and I kind of moved it. It was the same kind of creative energy, and I moved it into the music.
Okay. So when you are playing either for a silent film or you're just creating something in the moment, whether it's with a group or by yourself, do you see things?
I see the movie.
Well, yes, of course. I mean, do you think,
But when
are there things you see in your head that influence the music that you're
Well,
playing?
if I'm composing, that's interesting. I see people. It's pretty vague.
Sure,
I mean, it's
sure.
Like there's images, and I see, like my own trauma or something, like my own hurt. Things. It's usually like, or joy. Like the joy comes
Sure.
through. But the thing is, what happens is like it takes all those elements, and I'm not sure how visual. They're sort of like. It's a really good question, because I'm trying to actually visualize what I'm seeing.
Right.
And I know that there's so much emotional stuff coming in, and it kind of merges, and because the humor, what's beautiful about it is that humor comes in with some of the real deep pain.
Okay.
And it comes and mixes up with it, and then it comes out in a new form that helps me get through the day.
Okay. So as we were discussing this, something else popped into my head. I don't know if you have seen the original Disney Fantasia or the new one that they did.
I didn't see the new one.
Okay. That in and of itself is very much like the process we're talking about, where it is certainly music. Obviously, it's very written music, but you had these animators who decided to create something visual based on that.
Yeah, it was sort of the back going the other direction.
Right.
They were making the visuals to go with the music.
Right, and of course it's just completely interpretation. We could have asked a whole different set of animators and would have gotten completely different different animation than or,
Yeah,
or
right.
visuals than the ones who did end up doing it. So sort of the same.
Yeah, I
Same
wonder,
kind of
they
thing.
might have riffed off it too in a similar
Right.
way where they just kind of doodled. I
Mhm.
was reading recently about the power of doodling,
Yes.
and I like to apply that to music,
Mhm.
like just doodle
Okay.
and then see what happens, it takes you to places.
So, I've spoken with several writers, either short stories, novelists, whatever they might be, and usually they have a set process that they use. A lot of them get up early in the morning and start writing right away, just while the brain is fresh and there's not a lot of other things interfering with what's
Yeah.
going on, and they do it as a habit so that they can
Right.
obviously they need to produce sorts of things. Do you get out of the
I
bed, sit down at
don't-
the piano, start playing music?
I
or?
don't have habits, and
Okay.
I have lots of other kinds of habits.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like trying to, it just comes when it wants to. Really.
Okay.
Like I don't have any kind of like schedule that I try to follow.
Okay.
Because it's not something that I'm trying to make happen.
Mhm.
It's always been that way.
Mhm.
It's something that I can't avoid.
Yeah, sure. I had a short story class one time with Daniel Keyes, the man who wrote Flowers for Algernon.
Really?
Yeah, and one of the few things I remember him saying that has just stuck with me all these years is he would get an idea, he might write it down just so he didn't forget it, but he would put it away and
I
he
do
would
that.
only start writing something if it kept coming back.
Okay, right. That's actually, I actually have a loose leaf book. It's about this thick, and it goes, on the cover, it says Shop 501 or whatever. And that was in 7th grade. It was my shop
Right.
loose leaf. And so I still have that, and I have little snippets of lyrics that go all the way back there. And I rate, whenever I like some kind of line that just has a cool sound to it, I put it in there.
Right.
And I think I'm going to use it. And
Uh-huh.
sometimes I do. I actually have gone through it. But generally, like I'll sit down, I have written for particular things. In fact, both of them were at Unitarian churches. I wrote
Okay.
2 songs for specific situations.
Okay.
And I remember sitting down and just like feeling this, like feeling what I'm feeling around this topic, right? And my hands just start kind of moving on the keyboard, and I start singing, but I don't know what I'm singing about, and I just let it happen.
Nice.
And then I start to kind of say, okay, I'm seeing what this is about, and then I kind of like massage it in that direction so that it has some kind of like focus to it.
Do you ever get the sense, because I know I've heard Neil Simon say this, and I've dabbled in playwriting at times, and I completely agree with him. It's like the characters are channeling, they're just using me to get their words on paper. Do you feel that the music is out there, something is just flowing through you, that you're taking it from somewhere out of here?
Right, and that's why I just really feel like it's available to everyone. It's like the air. It would be like saying that only certain people get to breathe. Like it's just there. It's all happening, And so I am lucky that no one made me do it in a certain way. When I was like playing the piano when I was a kid, and my mother, for whatever reason, didn't even offer me piano lessons, but she let me put the piano in my room so I could just play it, out of, wouldn't disturb anybody.
Right. So do you ever wake up like at 3 o'clock in the morning and out of a dead sleep and just...
Oh, yeah.
Do you dream music?
Yeah, I've actually, I wrote a song that came from a dream.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's happened a few times, but it was one I remember specifically.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Of all the things that you have done, is there something you still are wanting to do artistically, musically? Is there something you have not been able to do yet?
Yeah, because I used to always you know, kind of marvel at all these different like musical revolutions. You know, like you look down through the ages at all these things that changed. You know, jazz, you know, but then within jazz you have these different other, you know,
Sure.
but then you have, you know, music of the Renaissance, you have, you know, Baroque music, and each one of these was like a new transformation. And so I always wondered, you know, and then, you know, hip hop came along and like rock and roll, you know, people thought hip hop wasn't music, you know, and then all these things, rock and roll wasn't music.
Right.
And so what is the next musical revolution, the genre that's going to come and change everything?
Right.
I feel like it's everybody playing music together. I mean, it's like it happened before, but it's going to happen now in a different way. It's going to happen in relation to our modern times, using like the technologies that we have and
Right.
all the kind of social relationships that we
Right.
have.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's the same. It's just as crazy. It's just as rock and roll was, you know, where people would say this ain't music, you know, shut that out, you know, turn that off,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
And so like everybody playing music together is going to freak out the whole music industry, and it's
Sure.
going to the whole economic system is going to freak over this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've had a thought for a long time where let's assume that classical music is the pinnacle of music. Let's just assume that.
Okay,
Let's
we'll
assume
go with
that.
that
For,
for- yeah,
we'll assume
okay.
that for the
Yeah,
moment.
okay.
And of course, that comes out of 1700s, 1800s, and then you get into the 1900s, where you start having operettas. You start you start getting into Tin Pan Alley, pop music, the Great American Songbook, which then leads, and then you got Broadway in there, which then again begins to lead toward rock and roll and those things that have come after. Do you see that as a decline in music?
Which one?
Any of them. So if we go from classical to, say, rap.
See, to me, the decline is with the music industry.
Okay.
And so, and it's not any of the genres. It's the way they've been packaged and
And we're told that's how we should listen to it, and that's how we should interpret it. Is that kind of what you're
yeah, we're
thinking?
kind of given, you know, a bill of goods about this stuff, you know. And so,
Because we love
to
labels,
me,
so
you
we're
know,
trying to label everything.
Music is music, you know, and there's no, to me, there's no like art music, and then there's, you know, somebody was telling me, you know, like there's the art music, there's people music, there's music that people make together, you know,
Yes.
for each other. They're
Right.
gifts to each other. They're, you know, that we share. And so music that's not about sharing is like not that impressive to me, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And
like,
a lot of this, and the way classical music, you know, then you got, you know, Schoenberg started creating all this weird stuff, you know, that was very intellectual. And was it really like connecting to people? Like were people really connecting as you know, and yet that was considered, that's where classical music was going, you know, in that direction. It was like going farther away from people.
right. Okay. Are you working on anything now that we can look forward to?
That's what I'm working on, is just people music.
Oh,
you
okay.
know?
Okay. But do you have any events coming up, or anything in particular that you know,
Wow,
where
I
we
should
can
have
see
thought
you?
about that. Yeah. Well, you know, I've got this band, Horns Beetle, with it's got horns and you know, that you blow into.
Yes. Yes.
And it's got. We just added a percussionist, and so
Okay.
it's a 6-piece band, and so we're gonna, as this new configuration, we're gonna make our debut at the Raven on the 2nd
Of
Okay.
January.
January.
Very
Yeah.
nice. What time?
8 o'clock.
Okay, in the evening.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's
So and we should not come with any expectations.
just the
We should
shoes,
just
the
come.
dancing shoes. That's
All
we
right.
need.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, but we can't label it into any particular genre.
You can, but it's not going to work.
Okay. So, with these people, is anybody writing the music, or are you just, when you get together, are you just listening and getting to
No,
know
this
each
is
other?
actually,
that-
what's interesting about this is that it's sort of the antithesis in a way of what I've been talking about.
Oh, okay.
Because it's like very, I wrote out all the charts.
Oh, gotcha.
There's like
Okay.
charts, you know, for the horn players, and note for note, and then there's spaces for improvisation. There's a lot of place for improvisation, and the drummers and me, you know, get to like just fool around.
Okay.
And but
Is it instrumental only, or is there a vocalist, or?
I sing. We all
Okay.
sing.
Oh,
Actually,
okay.
we all sing, and it's my songs except for George Harrison wrote. He contributed one song.
Okay, very
Uh,
nice.
And then there's another song, Tito Rodriguez. I forget who wrote it, but we're doing this Latin tune.
Okay, very nice. Oh, so I think those are pretty much all the questions I had for the most part. For the folks who are here, does anybody have a question for Jonathan? Yes.
Well, Jonathan, I really admired some of your early music that I haven't heard recently, and I was wondering how you got that started. Was when you would use anything that could make a noise and make music out of it and then lay it down kind of in tracks. And you know, kind of the washboard band type of thing, but you went way beyond it. How did you start doing that? Did you just pick up something, oh, that's an interesting noise, and let's see how that works, and so you put it together? Or?
Yeah, you know, but that does go back to early childhood. You know, I was always like tinkering. I was always like finding what made what sound, and so when they came out with this technology, like the end of the last century, it was like, okay, it was similar to what happened when they came out with, you know, the synthesizers that you could connect to each other through these MIDI cables, and then you could create a whole orchestra by yourself. So that's, you know, I got really into that, you know, and then when the looper came out, it was like, oh wow, I got to do this, you know, because then now I can just take any sound that I want and create these layers. And, yeah.
Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, there was a movie this last year, and I don't remember the title, but it was about a young drummer, and his teacher, and he went to like a Juilliard type of a school. Does that seems confining, constricting, from your point of
Juilliard?
view? Those type of music schools. This was a brutal instructor.
Yeah.
Getting the most out of this young man to the point where he didn't want to make music anymore. And I just wondered, because you said you did eventually take some form of training, but it wasn't from a school, it wasn't a music school.
Well, I went to school. I took classes, you know, individual classes but it was really about what I wanted to learn about. You know, it wasn't to, you know, get a degree or anything. So, but I actually know some people that have literally been traumatized by music school, and I know a guy. I'm sure that there's people in this room, but I know a guy that I was with his mother when he called her, like crying on the phone, like the intensity of like what he had to deal with, of what he was told he had to do, and the fear of succeeding, and you know, that's not what music is about.
And yet it seems like in the formal world of high-level musicianship, they're looking for people from that background. Survived it somehow.
Yeah, people that, you know, sort of like the army, you know, you want a certain kind of person, you know, that's going to, you know, and it's sort of brings up this whole, you know, child prodigy thing. And I actually, because they're destined for this, they're going to go in that direction. And I don't believe it. I don't really believe in child prodigies. I don't think that like certain children are just like musically gifted in a very, that I think they're kind of created actually. There's an agenda involved. I have strong feelings, and sometimes I make these sweeping statements, but they're to make a point. Mm-hmm. You know, there may be nuances to it that I'm not, you know, talking about, but I'm trying. It's something that's that I think is important.
Absolutely. Well, I think what you're getting at is something that is endemic in at least in the United States here, in our society, and I'm sure in many others. We love to label.
Yeah,
We want
we
people
do.
to fit into
Yeah.
certain categories, and you want to find what are the strengths, where should that person be going, as opposed to creating a whole person who can do a myriad number of things.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
and
kinda-
it can
it's
be
an
very
economic system.
debilitating.
Yeah, I think our economic system is built on this.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
it's how things are marketed. It's how everything is put together.
Right. Yeah, because you have a child who might be able to play, Tchaikovsky brilliantly on the piano, but can't scramble an egg because they just don't have the ability.
Yeah,
You
or
know,
else they're so focused on playing every note
Yes,
perfectly
yes.
that they're not able to just listen and be creative.
Right.
I just like I was saying before about the musical skills and the music, like to say that somebody is musically gifted is a very narrow way to look at, because there's so many ways to be musical.
Yes.
And so maybe somebody can read, you might have photographic memory, and you could look at a piece of music and memorize it and then just play it.
Right.
And that's amazing, but
Yes.
is that necessarily the highest form of music?
Right. Yeah, that's
don't
an
know.
excellent question.
Yeah.
That is an excellent question. I think we're getting pretty close to the hour. Oh, yes. Yes, question.
Well, I just want to mention that I am the recipient of a piano through Cone Music Key, and I've been very ill, and it has been a way for me to let out built up emotion.
Yeah.
And I don't read music, played by ear as a child, put it away because I couldn't read music, but loved to play. And last week sat down and took my iPhone and hit that record button and just started playing a melody and actually recorded it. Once I listened to it, went, oh my gosh, that sounds like something I would hear on Spotify.
Right, see, that's the perfect example.
And I want to tell you that you can hit any note, and I did it because I recorded it for you, to prove that you could hit any series of notes, and just with your emotions and pausing and just make a song.
Exactly. Yeah, all the notes, they're just like people, they all can go together, they have different combinations, and it's like, it's really a lot simpler than people. And to say that it sounded just like Spotify is a perfect way to describe it, because we don't need that stuff. Nah, we could do it ourselves.
No, that's awesome. That's very cool. Was about to say though is, I think we're getting close to the end of the hour here, and it'd be kind of fun to maybe ask some people if anyone wanted to come up and see if we can do just some music going out of the show.
Okay,
just
come on
create
up.
some music. Let's go.
And then people who are in the audience can just help with the rhythm and stuff,